All right, so following up on my last video, the one right before this one, this is the motion itself. Jack Smith's motion to ensure that extrajudicial statements do not prejudice these proceedings. It's a motion addressing Donald Trump's out-of-court statements and how they are attempts to influence, prejudice, or intimidate witnesses, potential jurors, court personnel, prosecutors, anyone involved in the case. And as I said in my last video, this makes those statements a part of the official court record. And if they don't get included in a document that's filed with the court, they're not going to be part of the court record. It's important that they become part of the court record because any appellate court at the district level or at the Supreme Court level, the circuit level or the Supreme Court level, those courts are only going to review the official court record. So now Donald Trump's statements out of court are a part of the official court record. So the motion itself, everybody's referring to it as a gag order. It's not a gag order. It's a request for the court to enforce its prior orders, essentially preventing the attorneys involved and the defendant involved, Donald Trump, from making prejudicial statements outside of court that could influence or intimidate witnesses or potential jurors or the court itself. And so it starts off by giving background. They say, this defendant has a pattern in practice of these kinds of statements that are designed to intimidate people, influence people, harass people. And they start right off with the 2020 election and his lies about the 2020 election being stolen. Defendant's conduct presents a substantial likelihood of material prejudice to these proceedings. The defendant has established a practice of issuing inflammatory public statements targeted at individuals or institutions that present an obstacle or challenge to him. And then we get into what he did to the election system, election officials. And some of these statements were included in the indictment. Now they're in this motion as well. The defendant knows that when he publicly attacks individuals and institutions, he inspires others to perpetrate threats and harassment against his targets. And then they quote the speech, I think it was from a guy named Gabriel Sherman. He was a Georgia election official that he gave in December of 2020. He's like, this has got to stop. Somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get shot. Somebody's going to get killed. Donald Trump did not stop. Shortly after the election, he fired his director of CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. I think his name was Chris something. And then I think it was Mike Flynn who then tweeted out that this guy should be drawn and quartered, taken out at dawn, and shot. And then we jump ahead to what Trump and Rudy Giuliani did to Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman, the election workers in Georgia, and the threats and harassment that they received in their lives in real time based on the threats issued and the misinformation and the lies put out by Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump. There's some more background, and then we get to the next section of this pattern of behavior has continued after he got indicted in this case. The day after his arraignment in the Washington, D.C. January 6th case, Donald Trump put out on Truth Social in all caps, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you." And the defendant made good on his threat. Since the indictment in this case, the defendant has spread disparaging and inflammatory posts on Truth Social on a near daily basis regarding the citizens of the District of Columbia, the court, prosecutors, and prospective witnesses. And then they break that down by section. And Truth Social posts that he put up about Washington, D.C. and the people who live in Washington, D.C., because that's his jury pool. Then he includes some posts that Trump put up directly going after Judge Chutkan, Tanya Chutkan, who's the trial judge in this case. And and further about there's no way that I can get a fair trial in Washington, D.C. There are many reasons, blah, 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 blah. Then the next section is Truth Social posts attacking prosecutors. And, you know, that all include the phrase deranged Jack Smith. Deranged and his team of thugs. And then there are some posts that are aimed directly at potential witnesses in the case. You know, praising Rudy Giuliani and degrading little Mike Pence. And then there are some more posts about prejudicing the jury pool and the argument that all of this behavior is going to prejudice the jury pool before jury selection has even happened. Then we get to, okay, so what do you want me to do about it, Jack? Section. What is the remedy that Jack Smith is asking for? He's asking that the court issue a narrowly tailored order enforcing its prior order against these kinds of derogatory statements made out of court. And that order is already in place, and Donald Trump has already violated it. And there's a section about Trump's attorneys want to go out and question potential jurors in Washington, D.C., which seems incredibly time-consuming and a waste of time to me, but whatever. That process will be governed very, very tightly by the court, but that's not a main part of this motion. We're gonna have 3 or 4 of these motions, because every time Jack Smith files something like this, Donald Trump's gonna react like a maniac, and as he does, there'll be a hearing. The judge will say, you can't do this. As I said in my last video, monetary sanctions are going to mean absolutely nothing to him. I think it's very unlikely that any of the judges in any of his criminal cases will actually put him in jail prior to Election Day. So the biggest consequence, I guess, would be the word, that this court has, that Judge Chutkan has, is moving the trial date up. And she kind of telegraphed this at the last hearing. She basically was like, if your client keeps doing this, then, you know, the only remedy is going to have the trial take place sooner, which will shorten the amount of time that he has to try to intimidate witnesses and potential jurors in this case. And that is something that Trump absolutely does not want to happen. He doesn't want any of these cases going to trial before Election Day. This case is absolutely going to go to trial before Election Day, and Donald Trump is going to be convicted. He's going to be a convicted felon by Election Day 2024. He will be a convicted felon before people start voting, which is amazing to me. And the polls are still showing them neck and neck, which tells you everything I think you need to know about the right in this country. And it's the 25 years of right-wing media in this country coming to fruition. They have been fed such a steady diet of fact-free, angry, inflammatory narratives about politics in this country that, you know, the GOP base lives in a fantasy land. They live in a completely alternate universe. So, but we're going to see several of these motions over the next few months that will result in orders from the court, and the punishment will step up each time. Trump will violate every single one of those orders until, I think, eventually, the current trial date is March 4th, 2024. Jack Smith originally wanted January 2nd, 2024. And I think eventually we're going to see Judge Chutkan move the trial date from March up to January, up to that date. So stay tuned.